Hi, everyone. How you doing? All right. I am very pleased to introduce Professor Alejo José Sison.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who holds appointments at the School of Economics at the University of Navarre and accreditation at
Catedrático, whatever.
Thank you. Which is a Spanish state university system. He was the president of the European Business Ethics Network, EBEN, from 2009 to 2012. In 2019, he was elected to the board of the Society for Business Ethics and was the president from 2022 to 2023. He ranks among the top 2% of the world's researchers in applied ethics and business and management. He's currently spending his sabbatical year of 2025 and 2026 as a visiting professor at the Gabelli School at Fordham University. So it's with our pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, and he's going to be talking to us about designing a human-centered and virtue-focused approach to AI and business. Thank you all for coming. Professor.
Thank you, Michelle, for those very kind words. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here. I'd like to acknowledge as well the invitation from Professor Nitesh Chawla, whom we've met a couple of times, the last one being in Rome in autumn of last year. And thanks to him, I'm able to come and visit you. So I'm here to speak about a human-centered and virtue-focused AI. So there are a couple of things that I'd like to underscore there. Firstly, human-centered as opposed to technology-centered. It's not about the technology per se, but about us human beings while we engage with technology, okay? And virtue focus is, as ethical schools go, there are like three main traditions, at least in the West. One is deontology, rule-based ethics. Another is utilitarianism, or the cost-benefit analysis of the alternatives that are open to us in every situation. Both focus on the actions themselves, whereas virtue ethics focuses on the actors, how what we do affects us, makes us better human beings. That would be the bottom line. I divided it into 5 different subsections, you might say. The first is a guide for the sorcerer's apprentice. I'll explain this because I'm writing a book right now. I'm on sabbatical, whereas other professors would probably go to the Maldives. I decided to go to New York. Yeah, poor choice. I decided to go to New York, especially this year. And I'm writing a book. So it's already under contract with Cambridge University Press. And my initial proposal was exactly this title, A Guide for a Sorcerer's Apprentice. And it was shot down by the publisher. I'll explain that to you later. Next, what is exactly AI? So I'm going out on a limb here. I know how reluctant people are to define what AI is, but I'm a philosopher by training. I need clarity. I need terms to be defined because otherwise we'd be talking past each other. Third, how should we engage with AI? I'm making a normative claim here. How must be, what's the best way to engage with AI? Why? Sort of a philosophical defense of my proposal. And then, bits and pieces of my research, okay? So, Sorcerer's Apprentice. My editor told me, I'm sorry, Alejo, but we've got to change that to something more mundane, like how can AI enable the virtues? I said, yeah, okay. Why not? Because people who understand, they can't relate to the Sorcerer's Apprentice. How could that be? I said, yeah. So I'm dating myself as a boomer, the Sorcerer's Apprentice. I'm not saying people have read Goethe, but at least they should have watched Disney's Fantasia, right? They should have watched Disney's Fantasia, where Mickey Mouse comes out as a Sorcerer's Apprentice, as the Sorcerer's sidekick, okay? So one fine day, the Sorcerer's in a hurry. The Master Sorcerer wants to get home early, and he tells Mickey, Mickey, you clean up the shop. So it's like graduate students. The professor's about to leave, say, okay, you clean up the shop. And like most graduate students, Mickey wasn't really interested in cleaning up the shop, or he wanted to get it over and done with. Lucky for him, he remembered that the master sorcerer, the master magician, once just cast a magic spell and everything sort of cleared itself up. And he remembered exactly those same words. Okay, so great for Mickey. So he cast a magic spell, and all of a sudden, the broom started sprouting certain arms, picked up the pail, fetched water, and all that stuff. Then he says, uh-oh, I don't know how to stop it. Right? So he wanted to go analog. So he picked up an axe and he sort of axed the broom into two. So instead of one broom, now there are two brooms doing the same job, filling the vat at twice the speed. Right? At twice the speed. So, disaster was about to happen. And thankfully, the master sorcerer arrived just in the nick of time. And of course, everything under control. Basic lesson. Be careful with technology you cannot control. That's precisely the case with AI. And also because AI, for most people, is largely magic. Why is it magic? First, because there's a lack of proportion between our inputs and the outputs, right? Okay, so I have to submit a 15-page essay tomorrow, and I just say, okay, I give a prompt to ChatGPT, and voila. Yeah, 15-page according to the format, etc., etc., etc. Magic. Yeah, and secondly, because like magic, we really don't know what's happening under the hood, right? Perhaps it's okay for me to say, because I'm a philosopher at I don't know anything, like my master Socrates. I know nothing. Yeah, but for you guys, we're probably into the CS space. Yeah, but not even for you. No one really understands what's happening under the hood. Right, in AI. And I've got sort of a behavioral science take on this. We humans, we could think at most 7 plus minus 2 tracks at the same time. More than that, we're unable to make the cost-benefit analysis. So imagine yourself in an ice cream shop and there are like 50,000 flavors. Yeah, it could very well happen to say, okay, I'm not taking ice cream today. I'd rather go for donuts because you just can't figure out all the different options. Yeah. So what's happening? I'm using LLMs as a stand-in for AI in general. There are billions of parameters, hundreds of billions of parameters. No human being could be thinking in those terms. At most, we've evolved to think of a 3D space. Children are unable. First, they're blind. Secondly, they start seeing. And only as a later stage of their development, they're able to think in 3D space. Now, try thinking in a space configured by hundreds of billions of parameters. It's just impossible. It's just impossible. Yeah. So be careful with technology that you cannot control. Another way of phrasing it is the King Midas problem. Sometimes what appears to be a godsend is, a matter of fact, a recipe for disaster. And oftentimes, the only response to this is through value alignment. Yeah? Basically, a transference of what we want to AI, for AI to do exactly and precisely and only what we want it to do. Is that possible? Probably not. Okay, if the problem is value alignment, what is our response? Our response, this is rather the Shoggoth, right? So how do we tame the beast? That's basically the question. How do we tame a beast? So a large language model that has ingested all the text available on the internet in the English language, right? Unsupervised learning says really, barbarous things. So we try to do, a bit of guardrails. We put some guardrails, yeah? And it's a bit more acceptable now, yeah? Everyone remembers ChatGPT. What people hardly remember, though, was Meta's Galactica, which was published just like 2 weeks before ChatGPT. And it was trained on a very well-curated data set, like all the journal articles. So, journal articles, scientifically vetted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it also hallucinated. And it was supposed to be like your pocket scientist. Of course, the expectations were much higher than for a general purpose technology. For a general purpose large language models such as ChatGPT. So all I'm saying is that whereas ChatGPT went through supervised fine-tuning, more to the point, reinforcement learning with human feedback, Meta did not have that step. So scale seems to be more important, if only for this reason, but both models still hallucinated. What I'm saying is that you could get the large language model probably not to blurt out the recipes for nuclear bombs or biochemical weapons and all that stuff, right? But you still need human trainers, yeah? And that's the secret sauce. Human trainers like legions of annotators, probably from the Philippines, from Kenya, from India, like rating the different responses, saying what is more acceptable. The problem here, however, is like you're putting lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig, right? And these models cannot generalize. Yeah? So they may stop confabulating or giving, really outré responses in a certain domain, but it will come up sooner or later in some other response. Yeah. What is AI? Okay. Yeah. Etymologically, worth remembering, the one who coined the phrase was John McCarthy, 56. He was applying for a grant. And his topic was complex data processing. Now, put yourself in the shoes of a reviewer, of a grant reviewer. You see the proposal, complex data processing. It won't make it to first base, right? But serendipitously, he came up with the name artificial intelligence. And the rest is history. Why? Because at that time it was called like automation theory, cybernetics, and these were all very loaded terms. The experts could not agree on how to call the field. He said artificial intelligence, he thought it was just going to be like a summer project in Dartmouth, right? And we're still here. Yeah, it had through, it went through cycles, but we're still here. So what is artificial intelligence? Complex data processing. In other words, what's oftentimes thought of as human-level cognitive tasks, now they could be performed mechanically by machines. I'm not saying, mechanically like a car, but by machines. Think of this. Adding, subtracting, arithmetical operations are human-level tasks, right? I don't know individuals, any other species capable of performing those operations. However, since like thousands of years ago, the Chinese have been using abacus to perform those operations, but they never called it AI. But that's precisely what the abacus is doing, performing human-level cognitive tasks mechanically. Yeah. Although we cannot agree on the definition, there's some sort of agreement regarding the goals or aims of AI. From Russell Norvig, I don't know if this is like AI 101, basic text, they say, a system that's able to do everything and anything that humans can. And they come up with this grid. So just for purposes of the discussion here, there are like 4 possible goals, right? A system that acts humanly or acts rationally, or rationally means like rid of all these biases, never gets tired. I think the way we humans are, right? Sorry, the way we humans are not, yeah? Because we're filled with biases, we get tired, we get sick, this affects our judgment, so purely rational. And they also divide between thinking and acting. I don't fully agree with the premises behind this grid, but for purposes of discussion, let's do away with the humanly column, because there are almost like 8 billion people. So why would we be interested in having inferior duplicates? No, for people, for things, thinking or doing things human, we're already here. So let's focus on rationally, on that column, getting rid of all these biases, cognitive and otherwise, right? Thinking, that's fine. Systems that act rationally, that's interesting. But I think more interesting, actually, are systems that act rationally. The lower right-hand box. So all this emphasis right now on AI agents, right? Able to do things that we'd rather not do, or perhaps they do it better than we do. Agents. And the example always is travel agents, which of course brings its own complications. So more or less common understanding what AI is, its goals. Now, how should we engage with AI? I'm drawing inspiration here from the work of Ben Schneiderman. He's an emeritus based in University of Maryland. And he sort of founded one of the leading pioneers in this field of human-centered AI. Now, how should I introduce this? Oftentimes, we think in a single dimension, human control versus automation, right? That's how the Society of Automotive Engineers think, where you have system 0, completely human control, right? Okay, then different grades. You have assisted parking, probably keeping to the lane, and level 5 is fully automated driving. Fully automated. So it's just one dimension, either human control or full automation. He says, no, rather, it's better to think in this 2x2 grid. And you see the possibilities there. Human control versus automation. Let me walk you through the different boxes. If you were a concert pianist, you'd like to show off your skill. So you'd like to have full human control, but very low levels of automation. You still want it when you press this key. It's actually this note which sounds, right? Yeah. But what you want to show off is not the beauty of the instrument, but rather your skill. So you want full human control. The lower box, clocks, mouse straps, very little automation, very little human control. I mean, you don't need much there. Let's move to the right side, airbags. Very low human control and high level of automation, because you don't want to be fiddling when you're in a crash, right? You want it to happen, immediately, blow up, and then protect me from, hitting this windshield, right? Then you have digital cameras, which are characterized by high levels of human control and high levels of automation, thanks to which people like myself, who don't have a clue about photography, are able to come up with, decent enough pictures to post on social media for my family and friends, right? Because it's autofocus and have all sorts of all of these Photoshop programs that could help me improve the quality of the picture. So AI that's used to augment and enhance human agency. Yeah, collaborating humans rather than to substitute or to displace humans. That's the promise. And AI becomes a super tool for intelligence augmentation, human intelligence augmentation. We're not interested in intelligence being rooted in a different thing. It's our intelligence that we're interested in augmenting because it's our tool. More on this later. I mean, if you have a problem. So that's the most interesting box, I'd say. That's a proposal. How do we use AI in such a way that it enhances and improves our agency at the service of our purposes, our goals? Yeah? Which is what we do with tools anyway. We invent tools to make life easier, do the tedious things faster, greater precision, reliable, etc., etc. Right? Now, why? I'm banking on, my philosopher's cap here, and based on a neo-Aristotelian worldview. The ultimate question is, what does this do? What does this contribute to my flourishing? Which is never really my flourishing, but flourishing within society as a social or relational being, right? It's interesting to note that the approaches have been divergent. There are people who are engaged in AI safety, who are more concerned about safety, reliability, and trustworthiness. Yeah, for whom AI is, as it were, a moral agent all unto itself. And safety, reliability, and trustworthiness, these are engineering problems. How do you optimize for those values? So it's all about, risk mitigation, harm mitigation, safety. Yeah. I understand that and see its validity, but I'd like to go beyond it. I'd like to do AI ethics, which says that the only ethical subject is, a matter of fact, a human being, and AI is an object. Right? Okay, so it's not only about improving living conditions, creating more wealth, but how do we become better human beings? How do we advance in the path of the virtues? And why are we interested in this? Because virtues are a necessary, though not sufficient ingredient for flourishing. That's a neo-Aristotelian take. You want to be happy, be virtuous. Everything else beyond that is beyond your control. If you're lucky, perhaps you'll flourish. But preoccupy yourself first and foremost with the virtues, because that's the only thing that's under your control. Everything else, whether you be sickly or this or that, well, it's beyond you. But if you have the virtues, you're making your best bet towards flourishing. So how can AI enable the virtues? That's my project. Yeah. And there's some interpretive keys here. Again, just 3 insights. What is AI? How can a neo-Aristotelian understand AI? Firstly, as a new efficient cause. What are efficient causes? They're causes of the transformation from one thing to another. For instance, diamonds are actually coal. It's been transformed. Coal has been transformed to diamonds. Carbon has been transformed to diamonds in 2 ways. Either through millennia of geological forces, pressures, naturally formed diamonds, or there are lab-grown diamonds. I just found this out, that you really cannot tell the difference unless you're a gemologist and you have special tools. Distinguish a lab-grown diamond from a naturally occurring one. Yeah? So AI is precisely this. You have some knowledge products, let's call them that way. Yeah? And how do you produce them? Traditional way, people start slaving it out, using their neurons, or using machine to come up with an essay, to come up with an artwork, etc., etc., etc. It's a new efficient cause. Another way of looking at AI, it's an extension of human agency. It's a tool, an instrument, but it's an extension of human agency. And ideally, it should be understood as a secondary cause subordinated to humans. Yeah? Secondary cause subordinated to humans. If I knew Python, I could be teaching Python to this class. If I knew, that's a big if. Yeah? But I could also sort of train a model, create an avatar to be able to teach Python coding to students everywhere, anywhere, anytime. It's still me. Yeah? But I'm making use of a tool enabled by AI to perform this teaching activity. Secondary cause subordinated to the human creator. And thirdly, AI as artificial slaves / super tools. If you've read the Politics of Aristotle, most ancient classical writing, philosophy writing, what distinguishes slaves from the citizens was not that they were not human, but they did not have the rights that citizens had. So there's no doubt about their biological species. The doubt was whether they had the rights, or they had a right to have those rights, fully integrated members of the community. So they did not participate in the deliberation of the ends, but boy, did they participate in the execution of the plans. Yeah? So you want AI not to tell you what to look for, but how to best get there. Yeah? Slaves are super tools, because certain things that we'd rather not do because it's so tedious, because it's so repetitive, or we'd rather do other things. So leave that to AI. like super tools, super appliances, so to speak. Things that have to be done anyways. Someone's got to take out the trash. In most homes, someone's got to take out the trash. There's so many other things I'd rather do. I don't think you need to be human to take out the trash, right? Probably to sort the trash. But someone's got to take out the trash. So let the robotic system do that. Whatever. Okay. I'm trying to go quickly here. I know we have until what 45 minutes, right? Thereabouts, yes. And as I said, I'm on sabbatical, so it's been quite a number of months that I haven't taught a class, right? So sort of feeling my way back in the classroom again. In any case, so I oftentimes address a business audience because I'm in the business/econ department, and I always have to be thinking about what's in it for them, right? So business is SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis. So this is what I'm doing here. SWOT analysis, like a strategy, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of AI. What is AI's strengths? Machine that performs cognitive tasks mechanically, not the way we humans do, but a different way. It's a new efficient cost. Remember that. Okay? Now think. Are you interested only in the product or primarily in the product or outcome? Or are you interested in the process as well? Because that will influence whether you should or should not use AI. For instance, calculators are ubiquitous. Does it make sense for kids to be slaving it in the classroom, learning to add, multiply, subtract, and divide? From the purely product or outcome perspective, no, hell no. Yeah? But what is that telling us? What's important is not for them to know that 3 times 3 equals 9, but for them to be able to perform these operations mentally. So the learning objective here is not 3 times 3 equals 9, but to be able to perform these operations mentally. It's the process, or it's the outcome, very much tied to the process that you're interested in, not just the outcome. Okay? So these are questions worth asking when you're going to use AI. That's its main strength. It's a shortcut. Yeah, I don't need to tell you guys that it's a shortcut. Yeah. Next, its weakness. AI is not human and therefore cannot take responsibility for its outputs. Not human, cannot assume any responsibility for its outputs. So it's distressing that the main use for chatbots, apart from coding, is like a substitute friend, companion bots, social bots, therapy. That's sad. Okay, so how did this come about? I was reading a very interesting piece of research where think of all the American troops who've returned after tour of duty, and you have to test whether, I mean, they've been messed up sort of psychologically, right? And there are never enough therapists for that. So probably come up with a model, ask them a few questions, and depending on their score, you could more or less predict how well they are in terms of their mental health. This has its upsides and downsides. First upside, people seem to be more honest and sincere when talking to a chatbot. Why? Because they don't feel like they're being judged. Right? So you can tell them whatever. Yeah. Downsides, it's a chatbot. It's not a human being. So it doesn't really know what you're going through. Yeah. It could simulate a certain understanding. And for some people, it could be enough, like feeling that you're being heard. Yeah, they're being understood. Short-term relief for medium to long-term pain. Because you're not going to get any better. And this is worse for the vulnerable segments of our population. The more vulnerable they are, the easier they're sucked into this AI relationship. Yeah? Because AI is sycophantic, And what? We human beings, we get pushback, but you have to learn to deal with the pushback. Right? Yeah. So it's main weakness. The opportunities, which is delving into what AI can do, cannot do, should not do. We already said the objective, the goal, augment and enhance human agency. Right? How could you do that? I think there's a lower limit and an upper limit. Lower limit. Tasks that are dull, dangerous, or dirty. Okay? Bomb defusal. Let a robot do it. No widows, widowers, nor orphans. That's fine. Yeah? Cleaning up the sewage system. That's fine. Dull. You'd all remember Amazon Go. Yeah, that project where you just can go into the shop and then leave. And, of course, this is magic. This is magic. What you didn't know was a hidden labor there. Yeah, for every customer inside an Amazon Go, there were legions of Indians, Filipinos, Kenyans, and surveillance cameras all over. Determine what you were doing. In the end, Amazon realized that it wasn't probably, it wasn't, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. So you say it's dull. Yeah. Also, consider this. We're talking about social technical systems. Think of an aged population, seniors, whose only chance for real life human contact is when they go to the grocery store. Would they really be interested in self-checkout? Answer, probably not. Yeah? So think is that framework, dull, dangerous, and dirty, but again, think, yeah? Who precisely is your target audience? So that's a lower limit. And the upper limit, well and good, use AI to repurpose drugs. For instance, drugs that have already been accepted or, FDA certified, but probably there are other uses for those drugs. Minoxidil was used initially to lower hypertension. People, besides lowering hypertension, they started growing more hair. So that's an excellent secondary positive externality, right? So probably you could use AI because they're non-toxic for humans. You could do that. Or to predict protein folding and think of better drugs. So there are lots of things, yeah? Not to play chess. It will beat people hands down when they're playing chess. But how many chess players have stopped playing chess? I don't know if Magnus Carlsen has stopped playing chess. Because it's not just the outcome or the result, but it's the whole process. AI does not play chess in the way we humans play chess. It's about the thrill, it's about the imagination, it's about stress and all that. Yeah? Okay, augment enhance human abilities, replace humans in dull, dangerous, dirty tasks. Threats. De-skilling us in our humanity, making us lose our humanity. One thing is, because of our reliance on GPS systems, people are already unable to navigate space. And automation bias, whenever the GPS system tells them, drive straight ahead, although I see that there's a dam right in front of me, I'd slam the accelerator, the gas, and no, drive straight into the dam. Trust the AI more than their senses. Hey man, you evolved, you survived thanks to those senses, right? The information related to you by those senses. So that's one thing. Now, if that weren't bad enough, we're also offloading decision-making and learning. That's really sad because that hits at our very core. And probably I shouldn't be saying this, but the use of AI in education. I mean, I'm not talking about the really sophisticated ones, but the run-of-the-mill, vanilla flavor use of AI in education. I say, why? Honestly. And I'm not very popular at my institution because I challenge the school authorities here. I tell them, what is your motivation? Two things. Fear of missing out. Fear of missing out. No one wants to be the last one to adopt this, transformative, revolutionary technology. Yeah? Fear of missing out. Secondly, remember that we're after trillion-dollar companies. We're dangling the carrot right in front of you. We'll give it to you for free. We'll give it to you for free. What is the cost? Privacy. All your students' data, probably some of whom are, below 18, not of legal age, is being used to train their models. And all this against a background where the gains for learning are nil, even negative. Yeah? Use ChatGPT versus, the traditional way. People can't even remember the essays that they've submitted. There's no ownership there because the neural pathways were not created. There's no rewiring. I don't like the metaphor, but you understand me. There's no rewiring because our brains are not neural circuits. They're not, you change the wiring and no, it's a different thing. Yeah. So losing humanity. That's the main threat. Okay, so I'm going to sort of bring things together. With sort of summary. Human-centered, virtue-focused AI. And CST means Catholic Social Teaching Principles as well. That's part of the challenge. For the common good, respecting human dignity, respecting private property, of course, solidarity and subsidiarity, participation. Yeah, I have that very much, in my control panel. Yeah. AI engagement, underscoring engagement. AI is an ambivalent force. We all know this. It could communicate truth, but it's also an instrument for disinformation. It could do either go equally effectively. So don't shoot the messenger. Yeah, it's just a tool. There's an appliance, an instrument. It could cut both ways, as with all technology. And more often than not, ethical issues are couched in terms of value conflicts. So what I did in the book was sort of go through the different clusters of ethical issues, identify them, and see how or why the virtue approach is superior to the purely deontological or the purely utilitarian sort of considerations. And what started off as a mere hypothesis, is being validated. And I'll share just a couple of examples with you. Privacy and transparency, right? So privacy. It's all about personally identifiable information. And we'd like to have control over that personally identifiable information. Who gets to do what, when, where, how, and for which reasons. Yeah? But at the same time, we also like transparency about exactly the same thing. Yeah? So don't you see the conflict there? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Yeah? And I assure you, although I keep my information very private, if ever I found myself in a situation in the emergency room, I would volunteer all sorts of data about myself and my parents and my siblings and my neighbors, if that helped the cause. What's that telling you? How do you know how to act in this situation? Practical wisdom, which is a virtue. One thing is the technology, the affordances of that technology, and the wise use of that technology, which will come through practical wisdom. Security, because this is very closely related, right? Again, financial situation, medical data, okay, it has to be secure. So what do? End-to-end encryption, right? What happens next? First, there's quantum computing. If it's developed enough, end-to-end encryption is useless with quantum computing. Yeah? Second thing, what if, it's no longer what if. As a matter of fact, there's this Pegasus. Look it up. Pegasus, it's a system developed by the Israelis where they're able to exploit backdoors in iPhones, iOS systems, and as well as in, what do you call this, Android systems. So you don't need to click on anything, but they see what's happening on your phone before you send them. Okay, so it could cut both ways, is what I'm saying. Yeah, and the proper use depends on virtues or algorithmic bias. Yeah, I think I'll have to end here. Just a few words about algorithmic bias. Okay, so bias is a feature of the data. Just call it bias because we don't like that feature of the data. The model cannot tell whether it's what we like or what we don't like. Yeah, and it's embedded several times. It's baked into the data. It's baked into the model. It's baked into the deployers of that model. There's no escaping bias. There's no escaping bias. So you say, okay, you're not biased, but what I'm really interested in is in fairness. Good luck to you. You got close to 30 different definitions of fairness. And I could fully understand the person who came up with the impossibility theorem. You cannot satisfy all those conditions, all those different conflicting conditions of fairness. They're like dials in a machine. You ramp up one, you lose on the other. How do you decide then? The model is not going to tell you that. Again, you have to rely on your sense of fairness or justice. Do not offload decisions which depend on the virtues on a model. It's snake oil. Using the words of Kapoor and, yeah, what's his name? Anyway, the two Princeton authors, Sayash and Kapoor. Yeah, AI is snake oil. It's snake oil, but further, it's harmful. Yeah. Not only does it not work, but it produces harm. Yeah, when you're offloading just decisions, because in the end, what you're interested in is who gets what, where, when, resources, at what cost. You can't model that. Or you can model that, but it's very basic sort of aid in decision making. Because AI was meant to be a decision support system, not an automated decision making system. So you're seeing this one. So what I've seen is that in all these different clusters of ethical issues, yeah, what saves the day is the virtue, not the technology. Yeah. So I think I'll have to end there.